So, not every episode is planned. Well, every episode is planned, but not every episode comes to me easily. Case in point, this episode here today, I had a different idea altogether yesterday, and then this morning I woke up and I was like, no, we are going to change this. So, this episode was quite literally planned probably an hour ago, and I just jotted up some notes, and it's something that's very on brand with my message ever since, I've created this space. And it's something very important to me and something that I've been talking about forever. And so this episode is going to be talking about becoming more than your body. So I'm going to be using examples of stuff that, I have gone through in my past, and I'm going to tie that to what I see now with, people in the gym space, online, etc. And I'm sure this is going to be very relatable for a lot of people. Either one, you've been through it, two, you see it all the time. And so while this is a platform for, education, it's also a platform for talking about mental health and being a good person and feel good vibes, sometimes some funny stuff too. So it's not just serious education stuff all the time, but today is going to be more, I think, of a serious tone of bringing awareness on certain subjects. And so before we get started on the meat and potatoes of the episode, I wanted to talk about a few things. So some life updates, because who doesn't like a good life update? So I recently started a new Instagram page. It's called Alpha Girl Strength. It is not going to be like my only page. I'm going to be in charge of two. So some of you might think that's a little crazy. But from what I had been experimenting with, my women's health content just wasn't getting out to the right people. And so I just needed to start over. And when I say start over, I mean just create a new space for that specific content. But I am still very passionate about my Fitty with Schmitty page. That's just like an extension of me at this point. I've been on there for a very long time, like probably 5 years. And so I want to keep that and keep it more educational and funny stuff, more general fitness. And then my Alpha Girl Strength page is going to be again, more women's health and performance related content. So again, more specific and hopefully going to get out to the people who need it. And so that's shout out number one. If you haven't checked it out, it's in the baby stages. It's actually pretty fun starting over. And so we're just going to see what happens. I don't have any expectations. I just hope, again, it gets out to the right people. And who understands Instagram anyways? I feel like it's always changing. I went through my old content probably back in 2020. I was like going all the way through it, and it's just interesting to see how it's evolved. So like carousel posts were my jam. I felt like I really nailed the algorithm at that point in time. And then when you start to get things, get the hang of it, stuff changes. So then I feel like ever since maybe 2021, I've just been trying to figure it out, just like the rest of us. So yeah, check out my new page or share it with a lady friend or maybe a male coach that coaches women. And I would love to learn of more people too. So if you all ever have any recommendations on, female strength coaches, would love to know them. I'm always looking to network and expand my network. So that's my life update. I will say getting back into running as well has been a kick in the ass. I used to be a runner, not like for a team, but for as long as I remember, I was, I loved running. I would just go, like even as a child, just running barefoot through the yard. And then I would run, out in the country where you needed to bring a stick with you when you go running on the roads because there's just stray dogs and you just never know. So my dad would make me bring a stick with me on my runs. So, that was a different time. You could probably still use that actually in Seattle. I'm not going to lie. These streets are not safe. But anyways, this is kind of all going to come together at some point, I promise you. But yeah, the running journey has been really rough. I'll talk about this later in the episode about kind of why I stopped running. But coming back to running, it's probably been, I feel like I keep saying 5 years, but I feel like it's been 5 years since I've actually been able to run consistently without a problem. So taking off that amount of time has been really hard coming back. So I'll talk about that journey later on in the episode. But as I talked about yesterday on my story, it's really fun being bad at something, I will say, or being new or being a beginner, because it makes you appreciate when you get to the point of, oh, this is easy. Like, this used to be hard for me, and you keep at it, and you see that progress. So I'm excited to eventually see the progress. So before we get into it, one more thing, Instagram poll. So yesterday I posted a poll on Instagram, running versus lifting. So which one was harder for y'all? And personally, I have been lifting the heaviest I ever have in my whole daggone life. Running has been so hard, so difficult. So I wanted to know what you all thought. So we have the results. 87% of you, so that's 62 people, voted that running was hard. I'm rocking with you. 13% or 9 of you are runners. Good for you. I look up to you. I am just like, you are doing great. I hope to be like that maybe one day, or hope to hate it less. Let's just put it as that. So let's kind of meander our way into the episode here. I want to start off with, again, the topic is becoming more than your body. So we're going to start with what my current training is now versus how I used to view movement. And if you would like to be, I'm going to put myself on blast here. You could honestly just see everything I'm about to say on my Instagram page if you scroll all the way to the bottom. 2018, 2017, maybe 2017, 16, I started documenting my fitness journey with no idea what the hell I was doing. Exercise science undergrad, but in my opinion, that doesn't mean anything until you're out in the real world and you figure your shit out. But there I was, just having a good time documenting my stuff, and how I viewed movement back then was really a means to control my body, because I felt so out of control in every other aspect of my life. And so exercise was one constant that I had in my life for a long time, and it didn't really hit me until college. I think it was the people I was surrounded by. I went to school in a beach town too, so like everyone's a model and whatever. And so I feel like I had to fit this mold, and you get into this obsessive exercising frenzy where, more is not enough. And so for me, it was really how to make myself happy, because apparently I wasn't happy with myself or how I looked. And so exercise was very obsessive for me for a long time. I didn't have a structure. I spent about 2 hours in the gym, and I biked all over campus. I would go running, and I wouldn't even warm up for my runs. Your body is resilient until it's not. Like, I feel like you have so many lives. Your body it's like a cat almost. You have so many lives, like you can do so many stupid things until you can't do any more stupid things because you used up all your chances. And so that's kind of how my college experience was I kept over-exercising, under-eating for a very long time. And again, it got to a point where people were worried about me and like coming up to me and saying stuff. And I truly did not know how to work out the right way. And so I looked to Instagram for answers. And of course, that's never healthy. That's where, this is why I have such a hard time with Instagram. It's never been the best place to have all the information. There's no way. there's great people on there, and there's really highly, educated people. I'm not shitting on it. But there's also people who think that they are qualified to give advice when they're not. Their body looks a certain way. Maybe they have good genetics. Maybe whatever they do works for them, but that doesn't always mean it works for you or the mass population. And then that's where I was getting my information from. And so I didn't really know what I was doing. Over exercising, doing honestly, I bet I still have my old workouts in my notes. And I'm pretty sure I was hitting every muscle group almost every day. So there's no wonder why I reached burnout. So I started to experience injuries. I think the first one was neuralgia paresthetica on the front of my thigh. So I couldn't feel the sensation of touching my thigh. I couldn't feel it. It just felt really weird and numb. And that was due to really low body weight, and my nerves were compressed due to they're being pressed, I guess, or constricted by not having enough fat surrounding them. So that was an interesting time. After that, I had some hip pain. Then after that, it was more of, what was it next? Knee issues when I got into Spartan races. I then had shoulder stuff because I just, again, accumulating stress and never deloading, and we'll talk about that later. So really just not understanding load management at all. No education in my toolbox at that point. And so I experienced a lot of pain, a lot of issues for a while, had no menstrual cycle for years. Hair was really brittle, skin really bad. I started having skin problems. And it wasn't until I graduated college, I got into the real world. I was still kind of going through those obsessive habits, but then you work a job. And so you can't base your day around your workout. It's more about basing your workouts around your work day. And so that was a learning curve. And then moving forward from that, so I was in a physical therapy clinic. I didn't really start to have a good, solid understanding until, I got out of that physical therapy clinic. It was more of a toxic environment for me. And that's also when I had a back injury. Sorry, I left that out. And that was debilitating. And I still don't really know what it was to this day because no doctor or physical therapist could really put a name on it. But it was so crippling that I couldn't bend over to clean tables. I had to be very physical for my PT job. So I was on getting up and down off the floor. It just was really hard for me. And so I feared movement for a long time. So I just kept thinking, oh, my body is breaking down. I hate my body. I don't like being in this body. Even sitting in a car driving was very hard for me. And I would just be so angry at, not at other people, but I'd be angry that I couldn't exercise how other people were exercising. And so I probably struggled with that low back pain for a year. And it was constant and never went away. It was every day I woke up, I was hoping it'd be better, and it wasn't. And what it came down to was me leaving an environment that I was in and then going into a more supportive environment. So the work environment I was in I was in fight or flight all the time going into work. I was just always worried I was going to mess something up. And then leaving that environment was the best thing I could have ever done for myself because I noticed my low back pain started to subside, and I also started to give myself more grace. So I was not exercising like a crazy freaking human, and I wasn't going hard every day of the week. And so I think that is when I started to appreciate my body more and view exercise of something that it's something I get to do, because for a long time it was something I could not do without pain. And so that's why I really empathize with my people who are going through stuff, because I 100% get them. And I know most of you, like especially if you're listening and you're a coach, I'm sure you've gone through a similar situation where something was really shitty for a while, and that's why you do what you do now. And it helps you get closer to the people you're helping, because you truly understand what it feels like to not be able to exercise, especially once you've been able to move your body before and do things so fearlessly, and then you can't do it like you used to. Like, it's more fearful for you. Movement is fearful. Like, it makes you feel that way. And it's really hard. And so getting out of that pain cycle of not being afraid to move, like I truly thought, I was like, this is a neurological thing. How do I fix this? And it just eventually went away. And it's not like it went away overnight. And it's not like it doesn't happen anymore. I want to emphasize that stuff's always going to happen, but you can minimize, the occurrences. I mean, you can't eliminate everything, but you can understand signs and symptoms, and like your body telling you, hey, if you do one more rep, like, you better not. And so tuning in is huge, and I really emphasize that with my clients. But that's kind of how I was back in the day. If exercise is a way to control my life, because I felt so out of control, and to the point of like where it took control of me. So it's a really hard loop to break. So I was in this like obsessive exercise, like this is gonna, help me take control of my life, but then it took control of me, to being injured and not being able to exercise anymore, to now, I lift 3 times a week and I do my track workouts one day. So that's 4 days a week of exercise, 2 rest days. 3 math. So anybody who, especially getting new into fitness, they think that they have to work out every day. The moment I started to, again, dial back my frequency, my intensity was able to go up, because I was giving my body the necessary recovery to repair and then replenish before my next workout. And I think that's where a lot of people new into fitness go wrong, is they keep depleting and depleting. You never recover, you never get your carbohydrate stores back up, and then you go, and that's another thing, is carbs are scary, and I hear you and I understand that, but again, that's our number one source of energy. That's how we're able to exercise, and maybe you can sustain that for a short amount of time, withholding carbohydrates and eating not enough, but it's going to catch up to you, I promise, because it happened to me. That was the whole cycle that I just explained. And so now I'm at this place where, again, my frequency is down, but my intensity is way up, and I'm lifting heavier, I'm setting PRs, and I kind of want to talk into this too, of like, what method of training am I, using right now. And first of all, big shout out, because my coach is literally the fucking best. Cooper Napoli, or Delta 5 Performance, however you might know him by. He is one of the smartest people I know by far, and it's been such a great, treat I gave to myself to hire him as my coach, because he's taught me so much. And I've talked about this before, of it's really important that you surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And that's what he is. And they rub off all their best qualities onto you, and you carry that down to your clients. And so it's really cool to kind of like get to know other people and like cherry pick different things that you like. And so what we're doing for me is I'm following the triphasic kind of method. And so that's worked wonders for my hypermobile issue of, being hypermobile is not a bad thing. It's definitely a spectrum of like, not that much to like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a whole different category of hypermobility. And I'm not really sure where I fall in that line, but it's really helped me control my body and build in like healthy ranges of motion, to be honest, because before I kept having low back issues, especially around like my cycle. And so my hypothesis is that my, ligaments around my pelvis get a little bit more lax. And then for me, that's when I have issues. And again, that's just my hypothesis. I'm not a scientist. I'm just going off of trends that I have noticed for years. And so utilizing the triphasic method has really helped me. Again, so you go through your eccentric phase, your isometric phase, and your concentric phases. And so each phase, we've been doing 3 weeks, and I've never felt stronger through my full range of motion of lifting. And so I highly encourage, if you haven't, learned about it, tapped into it. I'm reading the book right now, so I'm very surface level on my education with triphasic, but I am a huge believer in it. I'm also a huge believer that there's so many different methods, so keep an open mind, because that's what coaching is all about, is being progressive and keeping your mind open. So that's kind of to give you a very brief overview of how my view of movement has changed through the years. And this has been probably 7 years in the making. And even before college, I didn't have a high school strength coach. I did swim team, so I didn't know how to train. I didn't lift. I just showed up to swim practice. And so that's why I'm so passionate about, talking about this stuff right here, is that I know you're not going to start off knowing probably anything. And it's really daunting to even start to learn, because you're just like, where do I turn? There's so much information out there. So that's why I'm here, okay? Now I get to move my body. That's a blessing that I have every single day that I'll never take for granted again. And I pay extra attention to how I'm feeling. And if I feel something's off, because I don't feel awesome every day, there's days where I'm just like, okay, if I did one more rep, that would probably have been bad. And so, I'm sure everyone listening can relate to this too. And so kind of moving along and diving deeper into that topic of, okay, movement. Now let's go into nutrition. I used to, again, back in the day, I believed that I could only eat 1,200 calories a day. And that is so sad. So I, lived with a roommate who was tracking calories. And so I thought that I needed to track my calories. And so I started to use MyFitnessPal, and it controlled my whole life. And so that's why it's a very slippery slope. And so that's why I don't recommend my clients track food. And this is probably, some people are going to really disagree with me here. And that's fine. You're allowed to have your own opinions, and I can have mine. But the reason why I don't have my clients track food is just because it can promote unhealthy behaviors with food. Because there comes a moment where food is just a number, and I'm not here for that. I've been on the side of being terrified to eat food and looking at everything as a number, and it controlled my whole life. So again, not every coach has that view. And I think if you have a good relationship with food, you're not, susceptible to addictive. You don't have an addictive personality. Great. I know so many people that track their calories. I just personally, as a coach, don't. I don't. And that's that. And so the biggest thing I always say is just make sure you're getting enough protein, because that is a second job. Most people are not getting enough protein, especially women. It's very filling, it's very satiating, so it's hard to hit those numbers, but you have to prioritize that. The only way you're going to make gains, get the booty that you want, get the arms that you want, you've got to freaking eat. And maybe that means eating your protein first, and then eating getting what else you can in. Or else that means, breaking up your meals into smaller portions throughout the day. But that's one of the biggest things I see, especially with women, is that they don't get enough protein. Number 2, they don't eat breakfast. And so right off the bat, if you're not getting enough protein, it's going to make it that much harder throughout the day to hit your protein numbers if you're missing a meal. And also, we should not be exercising in a fasted state. if you're a very active person. And that's just for women. And I'm going to try and find the Stacy Sims article that I got that from. So there is research to this. I'm not just talking out of my ass. And that is also it is research, but also I believe that hardcore of like, we should not be intermittent fasting, but that's my 2 cents. So again, that's kind of why I don't really like counting calories. I just don't think it's beneficial for the mental health aspect of creating a healthy relationship with food and exercise. But again, it does work for people. It's scientifically proven to, again, calories in, calories out. So if we know where that's at, like knowing your numbers, then it's pretty simple. But again, it's that kind of finding that like that safe space of not letting it get too far and out of control. So I kind of want to move along here and how, talking about the injuries. I think this is very relevant for everyone. And it's about going through an identity crisis when something is taken away from you. So especially if you're an athlete or you were an athlete and whatever your sport was, that was your identity, and then you get injured and you can't do that anymore. That was your identity, and now you don't know who you are because you didn't have a backup. And I went through that as just a normal person. So I know from like the professional athlete side of things, it's just amplified 10 times more, especially with all the eyes on you. But I truly didn't know who I was for a while after I couldn't run anymore, after my knee injury. Going back, when I was under fueling, like under eating and over exercising, I didn't have enough body fat to, for when I was injured, I couldn't recover. So my body could not heal. So the healing process was delayed a lot. And I think that's why a lot of my stuff lingered for a long time. And so making sure you're eating enough, especially when you're injured, is huge because your body needs that extra energy. And so I really didn't know who I was, and exercise was my only way of feeling good about myself. And so it actually wasn't until COVID, like quarantine, 2020, when I got injured again. It was more of a hip, I think it was like a hip flexor tendonitis, and I gave up at that point. And so I started to paint and play the ukulele. I think that was the number one thing, was, playing my ukulele and going on walks. And also that's kind of when I let my body put some weight on. So I started to kind of gain weight. And while it was scary, it was kind of beautiful because I didn't have curves before. I was just all kind of like muscle and bone. And so it was really cool. It was like a really beautiful transformation. And even though I was uncomfortable, for some reason, I just knew it was the right thing to do. It was almost like I was ready. And, I'm going to make a post about this later this week, but basically you can't change until you're ready to. And so I think in that moment of like being injured enough, I was just like, like hands up, like waving my white flag, like I'm done, I surrender to my body. And so if you're listening and you are going through that right now, like you can't force yourself to get there, and I can't pinpoint, or I can't say like this one thing got me to this mindset. It was more of like, okay, I'm fed up and something's got to give. So, once I got out of that season, I, put on weight, and I found appreciation and love for exercise again through doing triathlons. And it was more of like aqua bikes because I still was scared to run. But it's more so the mindset of that got me through is focusing on what you can do. So no matter what happens, like what's taken away from you physically, there's always something you can do. Like I got to the point where I was playing ukulele, and that really helped me mentally get through things and going on my walks. Like I literally was like, I can still walk. That is a gift. So when you're feeling like, oh man, I'm so mad, like I can't do this right now, just think, it's probably not forever, I hope. And if it is, start to get into that mindset of like, okay, well, what can I do now? Because there's always going to be something. And so that's kind of, I'm telling you guys, I'm on my computer is balanced on this box right now, and if I touch it, it just like jiggles. So if you're watching, I'm sorry. One day we'll get the studio that we want. That's like life goals. So my takeaway point here is that you can become more than your body. And that might be giving yourself grace, patience, stepping away from something that you love for a little while and figuring out who you are inside. And that might be not being as fit as you once were, but that doesn't mean that's forever. And I think mending that relationship with yourself, is key in order to figuring out who you are and then progressing into your physical endeavors. I wish I knew all of the stuff before. And I wish I had somebody who would have told me all these things back in the day when I was starting and going through it. Before I did this disservice to my body, and I know it's a part of the journey, and I know it's a part of many people's journeys. And so, fitness doesn't have to be miserable. And even more importantly, it should not be punishment. And so that's my biggest thing from today is I know it's more common than we'd like for it to be. But if you see somebody who is struggling with this, like maybe over exercising, they spend a lot of time in the gym, I think the most important thing we can do is just to let those people know, like, be nice to them, create that welcoming space, and just ask questions and just be a normal, nice human, but build that trust so maybe one day they will come up to you and they will ask you questions and, maybe they'll want to work with you. So that's just my 2 cents. Being someone who was there before. So, y'all, I really care about this and near and dear to my heart. And I hope everybody here just believes, that you can be more than your body. And you will be more than your body. I mean, your body is a tool. It's an instrument. It's your friend. It's all those things. But it cannot be those things if you don't give them the supplies that it needs to thrive. So just like I say all the time, you can't give from an empty cup. You got to fill it up. So if you're in a place right now where your cup is empty, maybe it's near empty, focus on filling up your cup first before you give to other people. It's just like putting on the oxygen mask on the airplanes. You got to put yours on first before you help people. So y'all, if you like today's episode, please share with a friend, family member, colleague. Subscribe to the show so you don't miss any more episodes. And most importantly, if you'd like, and I would love this too, if you'd like to give a 5-star review, I would love that so much. And have a beautiful day.